Ora, l'ordine del giorno reca le dichiarazioni del Consiglio e della Commissione sul piano industriale del Green Deal per l'era a zero emissioni nette. Iniziamo il nostro dibattito e ha facoltà di intervenire a nome del Consiglio la Ministra per gli Affari Europei ROSWALL. Prego.
President, honourable members, Commissioner, thank you for the opportunity to address this chamber. Today we are witnessing uncertain times in Europe and globally. This is putting our economies under intense strain and requires new ways of thinking and decisive collective action. That is why today's debate about the Commission's communication on a Green Deal industrial plan is very timely. The Commission's plans provides a basis for us to reflect on what we need to do in the short term to strengthen our industrial and technological base. We also need to analyze further the potential negative consequences from actions taken by other global actors. But even more importantly, we cannot simply react to external events. If we want the EU to be a leader in a clean tech and other fields, we have to be proactive and get serious about strengthening our productivity in the long term. Therefore, it is essential that we start work on removing barriers for productivity and productivity-enhancing investments in clean and digital technologies. Predictable and competitive conditions for our companies across the EU will help us to become the front runner of the green and digital transition. With these purposes in mind, the Special European Council last week underlined the need to intensify the work along several strands actions. For instance, we need to simplify the regulatory framework and shorten administrative procedures. This is crucial to ensure that we need to have the necessary manufacturing capacity to reach the EU's climate neutral goals. And to ensure a successful green and digital transition in Europe, we need to equip citizens with the appropriate skills. We have to take ambitious actions to provide education, training, upskilling and reskilling. In order to grow and thrive, businesses also need access to capital. Existing EU funds can play a part, but even more important is private investment. Therefore, we need to finalize the Capital Market Union to make sure that Europe can remain a continent of production and innovation. But we cannot stop at Europe's borders. To be world-leading, European companies must have access to world markets. Thus, the European Council stressed the importance of supporting the WTO and a multilateral rule-based system for trade. Fair and transparent free trade and investment agreements should allow resilient and reliable supply chains to develop and the European Union to access new markets. These are fundamental pillars for drawing up a Green Deal industrial plan for a net zero age. Last but not least, let me add the work we took forward to the Commission's proposal. We look forward to the Commission's proposal for a long-term strategy at the EU level to boost competitiveness and productivity. Working on the long-term challenges and of increasing productivity will be crucial for attracting investment as well as safeguarding our businesses and industries' ability to compete globally. This is a discussion that we will come back to many times during the spring and indeed in the coming years. It is about making our economy more future-proof and recover the lost ground. Despite the pressing issues of the day, this is a challenge we must tackle now. Thank you very much for your attention.
Grazie alla Ministra. Ora ha facoltà di intervenire a nome della Commissione la Commissaria McGuinness. Prego.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, colleagues, and good morning, Minister. I think we all know that this is a decisive decade. By 2030, we plan to cut emissions by 55%, and that this work started 3 years ago with the European Green Deal. We set out a very detailed roadmap, Fit for 55, and we accelerated our work with Next Generation EU, using €800 billion worth of investment to emerge from the pandemic with a stronger, more sustainable Europe. Russia's war of aggression requires us to accelerate again this work, as Putin's weaponizing of his country's energy exports in a failed attempt to weaken our resolve. But this is a difficult time for European citizens, for families and businesses. Europe is being tested by war, by geopolitical tensions, by trade rivalries and climate change. We need to show that we can step up to these challenges, and we need to continue to show our resolve as we work towards 2030 and net zero by 2050. Half the emissions we need to cut by 2050 depend on technology not yet ready for market, or technology that does not yet exist. That is a challenge, but it is also an opportunity. The EU's net zero startups were worth over €100 billion in 2021, twice as much as they were worth the year before, and that will keep growing. Economic growth, competitiveness and innovation on the one hand, sustainability on the other. These objectives are not in conflict. But we need the right environment in Europe to make sure these goals support and build on each other. On February the 1st, the Commission presented a Green Deal industrial plan to make Europe the home of clean tech and innovation on the road to net zero. It is built on 4 pillars: the regulatory environment, financing, skills and trade. And I want to just briefly go through those 4 pillars. First, on the regulatory environment. This is about speed and access. We need to enable the clean tech industry to scale up and to scale up fast. We know that companies complain that permitting is too slow and there are too many barriers to bringing innovations to market. So one of our main measures will be a new Net Zero Industry Act. That will, for example, look at how to fast-track permitting for clean tech production sites. Second, financing, money. We need to speed up investment in clean tech production. We will adopt our state aid rules to speed up and simplify processes on a temporary basis for the decarbonisation of industries and for sectors we need to reach net zero. We will have easier calculations, simpler procedures and accelerated approvals. But we will also pay attention to the level playing field in the single market. Not all member states have the same capacity to use state aid. As we mark 30 years of that single market, we should recognise the value of our state aid rules for all member states, big and small. So our temporary rules will allow for time-limited, proportionate and targeted state aid where that's necessary to roll out renewable energy, decarbonise industry and support investment in strategic sectors for net zero. Public funding is important, but it will not by itself be sufficient. The bulk of the money to fund green techs and clean techs will not come from the public purse, but from private investors. The US has the Inflation Reduction Act, but it also has thriving capital markets that secure the country's competitiveness. Here in the European Union, we need the same. We need the Capital Markets Union, and we need to accelerate our work. And I want to thank colleagues in this House who are working hard on our proposals for CMU. Because it is about allowing businesses to access more sources of funding as they start out. It's about making sure that startups born in Europe can scale up in Europe. It's about giving investors more opportunities to invest in different projects and companies, including green tech and clean tech. The third part of the Green Deal Industrial Plan is skills. We cannot do any of this work without the necessary people. We need people to drive the clean tech revolution. We will need 800,000 skilled workers by 2025 in the battery industry, 1 million skilled workers by 2030 in the solar industry, twice as many as there are today. This is a chance to create well-paying, skilled jobs for the future. And this is the absolute priority in this European Year of Skills. Fourth and finally, we are focusing on trade because we want to deliver net zero at the global level We need strong and resilient supply chains to access raw materials, to open up markets for our products. We need an ambitious trade agenda, making the most of the deals that we have and closing deals that we are negotiating. So in closing, President, honourable members, I know we face challenging times, but it is in times like this that the European Union does its best work. I look forward to your views on how we can turn this Green Deal industrial plan into a reality so that Europe reaches net zero by 2050 and leads the way as a net zero industrial powerhouse. Thank you.
Grazie alla Commissaria. Ora